Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we're going to talk about some developments over there that are not getting the coverage I believe they should. This is one of those little events that changes the dynamics of things. It's a good marking point to show how things have shifted. And it's one of those things that isn't getting coverage, but in 2 months, people are going to be like, how did we go down this chain? And this is where it really started. Okay, so for continuity's sake, if you're watching these videos in hindsight, from this point forward, what we have been calling the opposition is now the de facto government. Okay, they have shored up their support pretty well, and they are negotiating with foreign powers as a state. Okay. One of those negotiations has led to a pledge of safe passage that extends beyond August 31st, beyond the deadline. The de facto government there is saying they will offer safe passage to those who are Western citizens, citizens of other countries. There's almost 100 nations involved in this. Or those who have documentation from those countries. Okay. So, in the little coverage that has occurred of this at time of filming, I'm hoping it will pick up later. The big question is, why should we trust them? Why would they do this? Why would they do us this favor? This is a holdover from people listening to Trump talk about foreign policy. Trump was really bad at foreign policy. It's not transactional. It isn't that they're doing us a huge favor. Sometimes interests align. You've heard that saying, politics makes strange bedfellows. Here's a perfect example. Who actually benefits the most from this? Is it the United States? Does the U.S. benefit the most from getting Afghan nationals who want to leave the country, from getting them out? Or does the de facto government benefit the most? Rather than framing this as the U.S. negotiation team showing up and saying, oh, please, pretty please, with a cherry on top, will you let us take our friends with us? Perhaps the other side, they're not ignorant hill people. Maybe what they're hearing is, hey, you're a newly minted government that has active opposition from several groups, and there's a whole bunch of people who are terrified of you, which may kind of motivate them to fight against you and make them ready recruits for those opposition groups. How about we just take them with us? They'd probably want to do that. The United States and any country that's involved in this operation is helping remove the dissidents from the country. That's only good for the de facto government. There's no downside to that for them. Okay. And then we have to understand that after all of this time of viewing them in a certain way, they are now the de facto government. They have their hands on those levers of power. They have to show that they can maintain the peace if they want any legitimacy on the international scene. And even if they don't, you know what they want? Power. And you know what power comes from? Money. Do you know what money comes from? Their minerals. If they can show that they can guarantee safe passage decently well, it will encourage mining operations to come in. If they can't provide that and they can't provide security, then those mining operations are going to have to bring in private contractors, maybe even foreign state militaries, which makes them look bad because their whole thing is to get foreign occupations out. But now we have to let them in to help mine because we can't do our job. It makes them look bad. But more importantly to them, if they're having to pay contractors and all this stuff, well, it lowers their cut. And just like any politician anywhere in the world, once they're sitting in that presidential palace, once they are sitting at those levers of power, they want that money. We don't necessarily have to trust them. You trust but verify. It is in their interests to do this. It is in their interest to do this. It removes dissidents, it legitimizes them on the international scene, and it gets them money. What more do you want? What more of a motivation do you want for them to have done this? Yeah, they're probably going to do everything they can to maintain that safe passage for as long as possible. Now, this leads into another question that I got. It says, Bo, I'm a student of military history, and you've got it wrong. Can you name a single other time the United States sat down with the bad guys, quote, immediately after the conflict ended and just started negotiating and having tea together? A student of military history, I would get your tuition back, because the answer to that is pretty much all of them, always, from the beginning. The biggest hint to the answer to your question can be found on the shores of Tripoli. That was the first major military engagement the United States engaged in as far as real force projection, military operation overseas. We're discounting rebellions, wars against natives, and any little quasi-war that popped up along the way. That's really funny, and that was unintentional. Okay. Google quasi-war, anyway. So that conflict, which incidentally was over a group of pirates not providing safe passage, went over there, fought the war. At the end of the war, sat down, negotiated, and signed a deal to get American troops back and pay a ransom to do so. From the very beginning, that's how it worked. And pretty much every conflict since then. It's common. War is a continuation of politics by other means. When the war ends, politics returns. This isn't unusual. It's pretty much what always happens. They are now the de facto government. And at this point, basically entering into a joint statement with 100 other countries, they're the government. It's not really even de facto anymore. They have the levers of power in that country. So yeah, we're going to talk to them. Why? Because, we'd kind of like to have some of those minerals too. It's a poker game. And everybody's cheating. The propaganda that gets disseminated in a country during war, the people that put that propaganda out, they don't believe it. That's just for us common folk. Our betters see the big picture. Our betters view it as another tool in the foreign policy toolbox. They don't become mortal enemies. It's all about influence, power, and money. So, yeah, it really is. I'm hard pressed to think of any time when we didn't sit down and negotiate with the opposition right after the war. That pretty much always happens. So this little chain of events right here, it is very defining in the sense of it is solidifying the de facto government's position. If they do a good job of this, it is likely that a whole bunch of foreign investment comes back, that they're going to get a cut off. If they do a good job of it, it is unlikely that Western intelligence provides support to those opposition groups. It's in their best interest to provide safe passage. It is in their best interest to show that they can behave like a legitimate government. It's not about trust. It's about politics. It's about foreign policy. And trust really doesn't have anything to do with that. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.